Well, you're not allowed to use mine.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine with me as long as I can keep
Yeah,
people awake.
middle fan.
Now we're good?
Okay.
Now we're good. Steve this morning said the worst name ever is Mortimer.
It's pretty bad.
You saw mine,
Have a flash.
so you're not allowed to use mine. Tell me what, give me one of the worst names ever.
Jezebel?
Jezebel. Jezebel. Trundy's good friend, Judy Ann, had a dog, a blue heeler. You know what a blue heeler is?
They're beautiful.
Dumb, mean dog. Beautiful.
They're beautiful though.
They're bred so they can be kicked in the head by cows and not be hurt. That's the kind of hard head they have. And she found this dog wandering the streets pregnant, and she named it Jezebel. That was the first time I'd ever come across anybody under any circumstance who had used the name Jezebel. Give me Meredith, I think, said Delilah. Delilah.
I know a Delilah.
You know, there's a radio hostess now who uses the name Delilah. You actually knew someone named
No,
Delilah?
she lives up by my son.
Uh-huh.
Sounds like a flower.
Yeah, this is a dangerous game that I'm starting with, because you never know who has a nephew or a niece. And
And we might say my middle name
Yeah, that's true.
is.
Adolf, is that what you
Oh,
said?
Yeah, that one's
Adolf
good
is
with.
Dorcas.
Dorcas. Oh, Dorcas was sweet.
And she might have been sweet. You said give me a name.
Yeah, no, you were right. You're right. You're right. I still haven't come across anybody named Judas,
No.
right? You don't know what Judas is, Denise.
I do.
I don't know.
He's Adolf's brother. Well, this has always struck me as one of the worst names.
It's icky for sure.
It's got ick right in it, doesn't it? Right in it. Ichabod. Ichabod. And to me, it's one of the worst names ever. You can remember the time you heard it as a kid, probably, right?
The headless horseman.
Sleepy Hollow, Headless Horseman, Ichabod Crane. Yeah. Well, I felt sorry for him, but I do want to talk with you guys this morning about Ichabod. And I want us to go back into Israelites' history, and about this time, they're ruled by judges. We're still under the rule of judges. And coming into 1 Samuel chapter 4, the judge at that time just happened to be the high priest at that time, a man by the name of Eli. Eli is the judge. And we pick up here in chapter 4. Let's get started today. Now the Israelites went out to fight against the Philistines. This is a ongoing battle that just forever seems to be happening here in the land, the land of promise.
Yeah.
Is the Philistines and the Israelites. And this time the Israelites are camped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines are at Aphek. Now we're not told by God, we're not given in this circumstance where God has commanded Eli to send out the troops to fight. Keep that in mind. Now the Philistines deployed their forces to meet Israel, and as the battle spread, Israel was defeated by the Philistines. They killed about 4,000 of them on the battlefield. Not used to that, are we? When the soldiers who are in retreat return to the camp, they speak to the elders of Israel. And the elders say, "Why did the Lord bring defeat on us today before the Philistines?" Why do you think?
Somebody messed up.
Somebody messed up. You know, Israel was used to the fact that if they were living right, if they were doing what God told them to do, God had promised, you'll win every battle, didn't he? 4,000 dead men. Somebody messed up. Do we know who that is? We're going to get to it. We're going to get to it in a minute. Well, these elders, they have a great idea, right? Remember a couple of weeks back, we discussed the third commandment. And I said, I want you to start reading this with a different verbiage. One that is totally sound as far as interpretation. You shall not carry the name of your Lord God in vain. God will not hold him guiltless who does so. And we said name in this context should bring to your mind authority. Well, today we're going to see a classic example of that commandment being violated. It's right here in 1 Samuel 4. Why did the Lord bring defeat on us today before the Philistines? Here's a great idea. Let us bring the Ark of the Lord's covenant from Shiloh. Sound like a good idea to you? Katie says, honestly, yeah. She's seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, hasn't she?
It's working fast.
I just about did it. We know the lightning bolts that come out of the ark, don't we? I'll tell you, this really smacks of their God not having legs. You remember on Mount Carmel? What did he say? Oh, your God can't hear you? Oh, your God must be out using the bathroom? Oh, your God just, maybe you should cut. This is the same type of mentality. Who thinks that the God of Israel needs to be picked up and carried anywhere? What kind of a idea is this? Let's bring the Ark of the Covenant from Shiloh exactly for this reason, so that God may go with us and save us from the hand of our enemies. They really thought this was going to work. They really thought this is going to give us a step up. We're going to win if we have the ark there. So the people sent men to Shiloh, and they brought back the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Did God exist in the ark? No. No. God existed above the ark. There at the mercy seat where Moses would talk with God. Now, let's talk about these two fellas. Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the Ark of the Covenant of God. Do you remember these two? Hophni and Phinehas were priests, Eli's sons. Go back to chapter 2 in 1 Samuel, and you'll see the sin that may be the problem here. Hophni and Phinehas would steal the sacrifices. You say, how? Well, God had laid out that he would provide for his priests. They would boil that sacrifice. The priest was allowed to take a 3-pronged fork. You remember? And he was allowed to stick it down in and pull out. And whatever meat came forth, the priest was allowed to eat. That wasn't good enough for them. Their father was a big fella. They wanted more. They would come and they would say, you give us before. People would say, no, that's not the way God wants it done. We don't care. And if you don't do it, we'll take it from force. They were stealing from God. Now, does God need it? No. And that's not the point, is it?
It's the principle.
It's the principle that they were violating the sacrifice. It was a big deal to God. What else about Hophni and Phinehas? Well, they were polyamorous fellas. Let's just say it that way. We'll just go right to the LBGTQ plus I, whatever alphabet you want to play. Hey, didn't have nothing on Hophni and Phinehas. They slept with the women who served at the tabernacle. These are the priests. And God comes to Eli and he says, this is on your shoulders. You've known of this. In fact, Eli spoke to his sons, don't do this. It's evil what you're doing. If a man sins against a man, we can mediate there. But if a man sins against God, who is to mediate for him? Says they did not listen. And God told Eli, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. What did he do to Nadab and Abihu? Two more priests, sons of Aaron, got too comfortable, didn't they? Thought they could just approach God with whatever strange fire they decided to use. Did not work. Same situation. Well, these are the fellas that are carrying the ark. Hophni and Phinehas. They show up. They come in. And when the ark of the Lord's covenant came into the camp, all of Israel raised a great shout that the ground shook. And hearing the uproar, the Philistines asked, what's all this shouting in the Hebrew camp? When they learned that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp, the Philistines were afraid. Did they have a right to be afraid? Sure. They knew about this God. It wasn't a secret what this God had done. In fact, the Philistines say a God has come into the camp. Oh no, nothing like this has ever happened before. They're really scared. They're picturing exactly what Katie's picturing. We're going to get struck down by divine bolts of lightning. We're doomed. Let me ask you, they carried the name of God to that camp, but was God there? We're doomed. Who will deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods? They are the gods who struck the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. Now, the Philistines don't know who this fella is, but he gives them the Braveheart speech, doesn't he? He rallies them. He says, be strong. Be strong, Philistines. Be men, or you will be subject to these Hebrews as they have been to you. Be men and fight. So, they go back to battle. Both leave the camps, come down into the valley, and there they fight. And the Israelites were defeated. Every man fled to his tent like cowards. I can't read that without thinking of my grandsons when they're playing tag. As soon as they have the upper hand or they see they're about to lose, base, right? You got to make it to base. These fellas are being slaughtered and they're running back to their tents. The slaughter was very great. Israel lost 30,000 foot soldiers. That's pretty bad, huh? Took the name of God and carried it somewhere without his authority and tried to use it for power. And now you got 34,000 dead Israelites on the ground. And is that the worst? No. No. But there's a lot of widows and a lot of orphans and a lot of mothers who lost their sons because somebody wanted to take the name of God in vain. But the worst is in verse 11, she says, the ark of God was captured. Can you imagine? The ark of God was captured, and Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, they died. They died. Struck down. What do you think they were thinking? They're holding that ark, and they see the battle's not going their way. What are you going to do? That same day, a Benjamite ran from the battle line, and he runs all the way back to Shiloh. His clothes are torn, dust is on his head. I couldn't help but look up this morning, how far is it from Aphek to Shiloh? And they estimate about 23 miles. So this fella just shy of a marathon. Just shy of a marathon situation. And he runs back as fast as he can. And when he arrived, there was Eli sitting on his chair by the side of the road. And what's he doing? He is worried sick. Eli is watching because his heart feared for the ark of God. When the man entered the town and told what had happened, the whole town sent up a cry. There's two cries, right? One, we're going to win. Another, we've horribly lost. Eli heard the outcry. He asks, what is the meaning of this uproar? And the man hurries over to Eli. Eli was 98 years old. His eyes had failed. So he wasn't watching with his eyes, was he? He was watching with his heart. His eyes had failed. He could not see. And the man told Eli, I have just come from the battle line. I fled from it this very day. Eli asked, what happened, my son? What happened? The man who brought the news replied, Israel fled before the Philistines. The army has suffered heavy losses. Your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead. And the ark of God has been captured. When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backward off his chair by the side of the gate. His neck was broken and he died, for he was an old man and he was heavy. He had led Israel for 40 years. It was too much for Eli. It was too much for his heart. I want you to try and contemplate losing the 10 Commandments. Because they're inside the ark. Losing Aaron's bud. Losing the bowl of manna. Losing the mercy seat. You've lost it all. Eli couldn't take that. I've never felt that. But we were talking about the heaviness of sin. It was too heavy for Eli. His daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant. And she's pregnant. You know, there's all stages of pregnant. Matters how you say it. Oh, I'm pregnant. Oh, you just found out? Yeah. I'm pregnant. She's ready to go. She is ready to give birth. She is near the time of delivery. And when she hears the news, that the Ark of God had been captured, that her father-in-law and her husband were both dead. I mean, she just squeezed, her whole body just contracted, and her water broke. And she gave birth immediately. She went into labor, and she was overcome by her labor pains. As she was dying, the women attending her said, "Don't despair. You have given birth to a son." She doesn't even respond to that or pay any attention. Her last thing she can do, she's going to name that boy. And she names him Ichabod.
What does it mean?
Ichabod. What does it mean? Because that's everything. That's everything. Ichabod means that the glory has departed. Because of the capture of the ark of God and the deaths of her father and father-in-law and her husband, she said, the glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured. So this is Ichabod. The N right here is the negative. So it's un, unglorious. Kabod is the glory of God. Boy, it's amazing how one little letter can change everything completely, isn't it? You could have named your son Kabod. That's the glory of God, the glory of Israel. Name him Ichabod. That's everything. That's everything. The glory is gone. Literally, God now has nowhere to sit, does he? The mercy seat, gone. The law that was to hold them together, gone. Why? Why is it gone?
Selfishness.
Selfish? Pride? Taking God's name in vain? Sin? All of those reasons. Did it ever come back? Well, the glory did come back, didn't it? It sure did. God forgives Israel. The ark is restored. It doesn't make it back real easy, but it does make its way back. And eventually it finds its way to Solomon's temple, and there's glory again. But then here comes sin, and they lost that glory. And now they're captive to the Babylonians. More forgiveness. You remember this cycle. John chapter 2. The glory exists in the temple at this time. In John chapter 2, you'll remember Jesus comes into the temple, and what does he see? He gets very upset. They've made it a den of thieves. He drives them out. And they come to Jesus and they say, by what authority do you do this? What sign do you have to do this? And remember what Jesus says here. Destroy this temple. They misquote Jesus, don't they, when they put him on trial. When they accuse Jesus of blasphemy before the Sanhedrin, they change it to, he said he would destroy this temple and that he would build it back in 3 days. We've been working on it for 46 years. That's not what he said. He said, destroy this temple and I will bring it back in 3 days.
He did.
Right before they destroyed the temple, he pronounces woes. Matthew chapter 23. He does 7 woes to the religious leaders of the time. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees," and then he'll pronounce a sin that they've committed, and they'll do it again and again. And on near the seventh one, I want you to listen to what Jesus says to these scribes and Pharisees. "Woe to you, you snakes, you brood of vipers. How will you escape being condemned to hell? Therefore, I am sending you prophets and sages and teachers." Did he do that? Yeah, he did that. He sent them apostles and teachers and wise men. And what did they do? He says, "Some of them you will kill and crucify. Others you will flog in your synagogues, and you will pursue them from town to town." Read the book of Acts. You'll see all of that. "And so," he says, "upon you will come all the righteous blood that has ever been shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zachariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly, I tell you, all this will come on this generation." "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing." Now listen to what he says. He's right there next to the temple. And he says, "Look, look, your house is left to you desolate." How is it going to be desolate? The glory will be gone. It'll be gone for the last time. As Jason told us this morning, they nailed him to the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me?" It is finished. And what happens? What happens to the temple? Say it. What happened?
The veil's
The veil is split in two, ripped asunder from the top to the bottom. That's Ichabod. That's Ichabod right there. At that point, the glory has departed. God gives them 40 years. He's patient. He gives them 40 years. But that veil was torn asunder. That house was left desolate. And that temple was destroyed. And in Matthew 24, what does Jesus say? Look back at it again, because not one stone will be left on top of another. In fact, he uses the same exact in Matthew 24. He says, this will all come upon this generation. Don't let people take Matthew 24 and propel it thousands of years into the future. Because Matthew 23, it fell on that generation. Matthew 24, he said the same exact thing. It will fall on this generation. Right before they destroy the temple, I want you to listen to the words of Christ, because some of that he spoke to his apostles. Here we are included. Jesus says on the night of his betrayal, my prayer is not for them alone, not for these apostles, these disciples alone. I pray for those who will believe in me through their message. That's you. That all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. Now watch. The glory is going to leave the temple. But watch what Jesus says right here. I have given them. Who's he talking to? He's talking to those who believe on him due to the testimony they've heard. That's you and I. Now what does he say right here? What has he given you? The kabod. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. I and them, and you and me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. We're not going to stay unified any other way. I guarantee you that. You're brought to unity by the glory of God. You're brought to unity, and you are brought to the glory of God for the exact reason that Jason said this morning. The tomb is empty. The tomb is empty, and that brings glory to us. Right here. We need to appreciate that fact. That where we are gathered is Jesus. Listen to Paul, and then we're done. Listen to one more thing. Paul tells the church, don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple? That God's Spirit dwells in your midst. If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. For God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple. What's the good news? He's risen. He's risen. We don't live in an Ichabod situation. I'll tell you, we need to truly appreciate the glory that has been given to us. The unity that should keep us together. The love for one another that we need to be not just expressing verbally, but that we need to be showing in every one of our actions. What is agape love? Active goodwill. That's what we need. All right, guys. It's been good to be with you. It's been good to be with y'all.